Finally, there was the conversation between Donald Trump and Putin. It lasted for 2.5 hours. It's the longest conversation between American and Russian president ever. I'm recording this video just a few minutes after the conversation is over, so maybe I'll have more updated information coming while I'm filming this video. But I will dedicate it especially for this particular topic, so what it means now for Ukraine. As the Washington Post says, Trump and Putin agree on partial ceasefire in Ukraine, but plan needs Ukrainian approval. Well, the partial ceasefire is actually Zelensky's plan, where Ukrainian side stated that there should be a ceasefire on the water, so in Black Sea, and also in the sky, so no drone attacks, no missile strikes on any sort of the infrastructure. But later on there was negotiation between Ukrainian and American representatives, where American side insisted on complete ceasefire, including on the front lines for at least 30 days, so Ukraine agreed on that as well, but Putin doesn't support that idea. He actually supported Zelensky's plan. And it was only possible because Ukraine launched its massive strikes on the Russian infrastructure. Lots of the oil refineries were hit. So to minimize its own losses, Russia agreed on that aerial ceasefire as well. Despite Russia having strategic aviation, lots of the cruise missile, ballistic missiles, and so on. So you see that Ukrainian drones matter, and I hope this ceasefire, at least partial, will be implemented in Ukraine. And Russia may also secure their refineries in this case. And it is happening minutes after the conversation of Donald Trump and Putin is over. So what kind of the partial ceasefire is achieved? I don't see it, honestly. As the Russian Kremlin media stated, Putin has already ordered the ceasefire in the air. But why those are the Russian drones flying in Ukraine? So maybe even the partial ceasefire is hard to achieve with the Russian regime. And now we have the air sirens in Kiev. So yeah, Russia is definitely not going to ceasefire or to start the ceasefire, it's better to say. Well, still there is the small chance for this partial ceasefire, but in general, I don't believe in that the ceasefire could be reached with this Putin, with his regime. And again, Putin comes out with surrendering conditions for Ukraine. He said that Russia will follow the ceasefire proposal only if the military support of Ukraine is completely frozen. And not just by United States of America, Europe also should no longer give its weapons to Ukraine. This condition is basically unacceptable for Ukraine because Russia in its turn will continue to produce their own weaponry and will continue to receive artillery shells and other weapons from their allies like North Korea, and parts from Iran and drone parts from China. And I'm sure that Ukraine and Europe would never agree on that condition, and for this only reason a ceasefire, even 30-day ceasefire, is not looking possible. Would Donald Trump seize the United States support for Ukraine once again and intelligence data? Well, I'm not sure, but we may expect anything from Donald Trump. He is really unpredicted, and we see how he really pushes Ukraine, including President Zelensky, so I do not exclude that Trump will push Ukraine once again with a new force. As for Russia, well, Trump still sugarcoats Putin with his rhetorics at least. The good news for Ukraine that the main European countries, they are really determined to support Ukraine. For example, Germany, they already proclaimed that it's not just the war against Ukraine, but it's the war against European countries in general. They understand ambitions of Putin, so despite Trump's opinion or Trump's will, Europe has its own independent policy, so I'm sure that they will support Ukraine. With what? Well, it's the other story, but I'm sure that Ukraine will not be abandoned by its allies in Europe. My friends, by the way, if you want to support the job that I do here on YouTube, you might also join me on Patreon. I'll put the link for my Patreon page right in the video description below. Thank you so much for supporting my motivation. And you know what? Putin has other demands to Ukraine. For example, Ukraine should stop absolutely its mobilization for the 30-day ceasefire period. I guess Kremlin also mentioned stop training of the Ukrainian forces as well. Well, on one side, it's quite funny to come out with those demands to Ukraine because those are really unrealistic for Ukraine to implement and even to look for. Because the Ukrainian army itself is the only guarantee for Ukraine. There is no other type of guarantee of security of Ukrainian territory, Ukrainian people, Ukraine gave up its nukes. No real guarantees were provided by the Budapest Memorandum countries, so Ukraine mainly has to rely on its own, speaking about soldiers, so manpower. There is already crisis with that in Ukraine, so Ukraine will absolutely not stop its mobilization. It is no-go scenario for any sort of the agreement. So Putin is not looking for solutions of how to stop this freaking war. No, he's looking for the possible excuses to continue this war, because he is very comfortable in his new emploi, or you may call it environment, where he is a strong leader again, where he's speaking with American president, who tells that probably it's better to lift the sanctions from Russia, and who also blames Ukraine even harder than Russia for this war. So why to stop it? For what? Putin doesn't need it. So Donald Trump doesn't understand that feature and probably will never understand. My personal opinion that he is not competent to be a United States president. I think that many of my followers agree with me. I guess all of the MAGA supporters have already unsubscribed from this channel. Right, the White House press secretary came out with its statement relative and dedicated to the conversation between Donald Trump and Putin, where they say that both leaders agreed that this conflict needs to end with a lasting peace. They also will improve relations between the United States and Russia. And here United States again equalize Ukraine and Russia, telling that they spend lots of the funds for war, but instead they should spend for the needs of their own people. Like, does Ukraine has even an option for that? Ukraine has been attacked by Russia, so it has no choice but to spend budget funds for its military to defend the country. And stupid White House administration doesn't understand that. And because of this lack of the competence of the American leader and his team, guys, I do not believe that any sort of the agreement, robust agreement, could be achieved between Ukraine and Russia, so war will just continue. At least I say it like that, judging on reaction of Putin, reaction of White House and everything. Here we have the same old song, this conflict should never have been started if Donald Trump was a president. Did they say that? No, but they usually say. So the leaders agreed that the movement for peace will begin with an energy and infrastructure ceasefire, but as I've showed you, we have air sirens and drones reported in Ukraine, flying in Ukrainian airspace. They mentioned Black Sea, full ceasefire and permanent peace. Negotiations will begin immediately in the Middle East. So there will be again negotiations, and the result, I guess it will be the same. They also say that leaders spoke about Middle East region of potential cooperation to prevent future conflicts. I guess they mention Iran, but Russia has limited influence on Iran. If we speak about Iranian nuclear program, Iran is quite independent with that. Maybe Russia wants to show that, okay, we're willing to help you there with Iran, but in fact they cannot do it. It was understandable since Obama period, and they already talked with Russia to influence Iran, but Russia did absolutely nothing. That's why Iranian deal was agreed between Europe and the United States by the time, and later on, I guess it was cancelled by Donald Trump during his first term. They also discussed the need to stop proliferation of strategic weapons. And again they say about Iran that it should never be in position to destroy Israel. Yes, but Russia has nothing to do with that. Well, they may supply their weapons and technologies to Iran, even to produce nuclear weaponry, so in a way they may limit themselves from those supplies, but in general, Iran is quite productive on its own. Again, they say about bilateral relationship between the United States and Russia. Huge upside. This includes enormous economic deals and geopolitical stability. Then peace has been achieved. It means that Donald Trump wants to make business with Russia as usual, and Ukraine is just an obstacle for him. And how the war in Ukraine could end potentially, well, it doesn't matter for Trump. He just wants to get rid of that obstacle, and for him, if Russia occupies half of Ukraine or maybe all of the Ukraine, he is okay with that. Well, Donald Trump comes out with his own tweet on Truth Social, as he does usually. My phone conversation today with President Putin of Russia was a very good and productive one. Yeah, despite Putin doesn't want any sort of the ceasefire, but the conversation was really productive. We agreed to an immediate ceasefire on all energy and infrastructure. immediately agreed that the Russian Shahid drones are flying in Ukraine, with an understanding that we will be working quickly to have a complete ceasefire and ultimately an end to this very horrible war between Russia and Ukraine, or it's better to say war of Russia against Ukraine. Are you ready? Yeah, this war would have never started if I were president. What a lunatic guys you have in the United States as your president. It's beyond cringe. Many elements of a contract for peace were discussed, including the fact that thousands of soldiers have been killed, and both President Putin and President Zelensky would like to see it end. That process is now in full force and effect, and we will hopefully, for the sake of humanity, get the job done. So here Donald Trump says that they will be working with Russia for a complete ceasefire. Ukraine, by the way, already agreed on that, for a complete ceasefire for the 30 days as promised. And here Donald Trump actually confirms that Russia doesn't agree with that because they will still continue working. So that conversation between Putin and Trump was for nothing really. Well, the only plus that I see that tomorrow there's gonna be the exchange of the prisoners of war. 175 Ukrainians, 175 Russians will be exchanged, hopefully. And about the partial ceasefire, well, I just hope that it will be achieved. But as I told you, right now there are many of the Russian drones in Ukrainian sky. Kind of the interesting stuff is happening in Moscow. Russians remove ZVO signs which they put there right in front of the embassy of the United States of America. There was also some other sign together, ZVO or something like that, so it's been removed just in the minutes I'm recording this video. Those signs were there almost from the very beginning of the full-scale war of Russia against Ukraine. The New York Times also comes out with the article saying that Putin doesn't agree on Trump's demand for the 30 days period of the ceasefire. In this case, how Donald Trump might push a Russian leader? Well, actually, he's out of tools to do so. Even if Donald Trump wanted, like the previous White House administration, with its great experience in politics, by the way, even they were out of the tools to push Russia really hard, because Russia is not a closed country after all. Despite all of the sanctions, Russia still has the trade partners, and will have those in any sort of the case. The world is not just the United States of America. So I say that definitely Putin wants to get more of the Ukrainian territories, and he understands that if there is a ceasefire, the chances for him to do so are much lower. He really thinks that he's winning on the front lines. It's not always like that, and tomorrow you're gonna see it yourself, because we have the good news and good update from the front lines. It is not that great for the Russian army after all. But clearly Putin wants this war to continue, and he agreed on partial ceasefire, just maybe for Donald Trump to say that, okay, I have some of the pluses, I'm heading towards the end of the war, so he's like a winner in the situation. But at the same time, Putin is winner too, because he disagreed with American president. So what are the next actions from Donald Trump? Well, obviously he will not impose new sanctions on Russia. I don't see it happening in the coming future. What he might do is again to push Ukraine, because Ukraine is very dependent on the United States of America. He might again stop military support and intelligence sharing support, and he might also ask European partners to stop delivering weapons to Ukraine as well, but Europe would not agree on that. So the situation is basically a dead end for Donald Trump. With his ambitions to resolve this war, to end it very fast, he might even do worse. And there is absolutely no solution to finish this war fast. What he should do, as I see it and as normal people see it, is he should press aggressor, so Russian Federation, introducing as many sanctions as possible, and also reinforcing Ukrainian army, because it is the only force that is fighting and stopping this crazy dictator on the name Putin. But something tells me that Donald Trump is not looking for this possible scenario. My friends, please don't forget to support this channel using my personal link for my Patreon page in the video description just below. Thank you for supporting my motivation, and as usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.